Hey guys, I'm Dov, and it is with great displeasure that I am bringing you some hot, dark elf action for Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer. We're going to be getting straight to it. I've got a bunch of dark elf replays from my Banner Cup a few weeks ago that I hadn't got a chance to cast, so let's take a look here. We've got Malekith leading the way against the Dwarves on a Lizard Limo, 2 units of Lizard Limos, Bleak Swords, Black Ark Corsairs, and Hargonath Executioners in the back. Looks like, what, 4 Corsairs? 2 Bleak Swords. We've also got Lore of Shadows, as well. As for the Dwarves, they're going to be led by a Rune Lord. We've got Rangers and Bugman's Rangers, plenty of Quarrelers, lots of Dwarf units in general. Just a nice wide Dwarf Missile Army. This, of course, is Umaze. Playing the Dwarves, we've seen builds like this before from him, and let's see what the Dark Elves can do, already pushing through on multiple fronts. The Corsairs, with their anti-infantry, will be able to trade decently well against, like, miners and stuff like that. It's like Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin being used on the Cold One Chariot there. This one getting absolutely shredded by crossbows and by those Brimstone guns up in the air. Just a bad time, but the other unit of Lizard Limos is able to make contact with these Rangers, start doing some damage there. Meanwhile, on the front line, Corsairs not getting the best end of the engagement, but at the same time, they are able to get in, do some damage on some fronts. The Harpies now pushing the Gyrocopters away. That is going to force the crossbows to make some decisions about, whether to shoot the Harpies, whether to shoot the infantry here. And just in time, it looks like the Hargonath Executioners are going to be routing those miners with blasting charges and starting to push up through in the back line. Malekith also doing lots of anti-infantry damage, already helping to clean up various units supporting his infantry. He's trying to stay tight here with his missiles. If he can clear out his Gyrocopter as priority, that will be great, but I honestly think he probably should be focusing all his crossbows on these Hargonath Executioners at the moment. I mean, yeah, losing the Gyrocopters feels bad, and they are going to be a very necessary tool for taking out Malekith. They might even be essential, but at this point it's a little bit of a lost cause, and these Hargonath Executioners are going to get in, do an extreme amount of damage, already mopping up a unit of Dwarf Warriors. Yeah, Murderous Prowess going to pop off at this point, which will obviously give a nice damage spike to all of the Dark Elf units, and especially, the higher DPS ones like these Chariots. Malekith himself, Murderous Mastery on, or no, just Murderous Prowess on him. Murderous Mastery on those Executioners are up to 48 attack, the 30 charge bonus, just absolutely wrecking units here, up to 150 kills and climbing, just absolutely blending through the Dwarfs. That being said, things are not looking that great for the Dark Elves in terms of balance of power. Harpies have taken a lot of damage. One of those Lizard Limos is long gone, but this is one thing that's pretty nice. I've been talking quite a bit recently about infantry speed in my videos, and Black Ark Corsairs at 40 speed match up excellently against even fast, quote-unquote, Dwarf units like Rangers at 33. Of course, all armored Dwarf units going to be much slower, and as a result, these Corsairs can do a lot of interesting things, drawing units away, chasing, routing Dwarf infantry very effectively, and even against, I should say, especially against Rangers, because of the Rangers' lack of armor, they will trade efficiently. I really like the pick of them here. You can see they're pressuring away these Quarrelers. Over here, they're pressuring away these Quarrelers. Norgrunling's Ironbreakers trying to catch up, but they're just not fast enough, right? And here, these Bleak Swords getting some support from the Chariots. A little bit of an awkward engagement for those Corsairs on the Rangers, but they were able to catch them at the very least. And Malekith doing a great job rolling over the Bugmans on the Lizard Limo. Not a mount choice you see super often. I'm a big fan of it in this matchup, and against the Skaven it can be pretty good as well. It's a little bit risky to getting just mass blasted by cannons, because you only have a little bit of healing from Soul Stealer potentially, so you do have to be careful of that. But if you can get into the fight against either of those factions, you certainly can get a lot of anti-infantry damage done. Yeah, you could also potentially take it against the Greenskins, although a lot of the time you just see Malekith on the Dragon, because I would argue it is a bit more competitive, but see the choice here definitely working out. And yeah, balance of power still dead even. Murderous Prowess has worn off, so now it's just, honest fight. And finally, the Hargonath Executioners are taking some damage. I'm not sure from exactly what, but 173 kills on the XP Chevron, so they've absolutely paid for themselves. Now it's just up to Malekith and the rest of these remaining units to try and clean up here. Shadow Sorceress, 11 kills, not too much, just been casting some Penumbral Pendulums in various places. So far so good, but yeah, these Corsairs, we've still got 2 pretty healthy units of Corsairs. They have just primarily been chasing routing units. 102 kills, some Chevrons, 54 kills and some Chevrons there, and that's what I'm talking about. Using the Chariots in tandem with the Corsairs. The Chariots can come in, do a lot of shock damage. The Corsairs kind of almost get a rear charge penalty in a lot of cases. and just when the units rout, they can mop them up very, very quickly. So, yeah, I love the usage of the Corsairs here. A brutal volley of blasting charges, though, going to be thrown in, do some damage to those Bugman's Rangers, probably rout them off, but it also wrecks those Corsairs, who had up to this point been pretty healthy. We still have this other unit of Corsairs, though, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of infantry speed. You see how these guys, I mean, especially against Ironbreakers at 26 speed, 40 speed, they can kind of draw them away, and the longer the Ironbreakers chase there, the further they get away from engagements that actually matter. And the Corsairs obviously don't want to just take that fight. They'd probably lose, just because of the massive melee defense there. Maybe not, but yeah. Right now, it's looking pretty good for the Dark Elves. Despite what the balance of power may tell you, there's not a lot of tools that can take out Malekith at this point. There's no Trollhammer torpedoes or anything like that, so I believe the Dwarf multicast I did of Yumeis was after this, right? I want to say that those were from the Flash tournament. This is the Banner Cup, which was maybe a week or two before that, so we saw a similar game to this in that multicast where Yumeis actually had, I believe, some Trollhammer torpedoes that were able to just shred Malekith, if I'm remembering right. I cast so many games, guys. You let me know if I'm completely getting this wrong, but I want to say that Yumeis probably learned you gotta have at least one, I would say, Trollhammer torpedo, just as insurance to try and take out Malekith. You know, that being said, Malekith can respond at somewhat of a distance with Soul Stealer. It does really effective damage to you know, low model count units, especially stuff like Iron Drakes. But even still, just a handful of Iron Drakes, like 5 or 6 of them, can do very effective damage to Malekith, so you do need to be careful of that. As it stands right now, though, you can see the Corsairs closing for the final engagements against these Iron Breakers. Once the Iron Breakers are fixed, of course, Malekith can come in, get good rear charges, bypassing their massive melee defense, 82 melee defense on those Nordgrimling's Iron Breakers with 90 unit models. Just being tied down by the Corsairs will be very important. You can see the mass of the Dwarves as Malekith kind of struggles to pull through here. He actually has to pull through his own troops to get through those Iron Breakers because they are just so thick. Yeah, we have some other replays to get to, so we'll fast forward through this late game cleanup phase as the Chariots do their thing against the Dwarves. Yeah, got a handful of infantry coming back and kind of tying down as well. Here comes the Corsairs again, relatively healthy. They are going to get mashed by the Iron Breakers, as I was mentioning, but with a nice little surround here, the few Bleak Swords come back, and Malekith manages to actually catch the Rune Lord on a bit of a pummel there, take him out, and that will lead to army losses for the Dwarves pretty quickly. And, yeah, that will be games. So, Raptor takes that one home. Ronan takes that one home. Very, very narrow win against Yumeis. An excellent use of the Cold One Chariots in tandem with the Black Ark Corsairs. And look at that, 113, 91, 62, and 89. This one only got 29. And I guess they probably had those chevrons, at least some of them, beforehand. But, yeah, those are very good kill numbers against Dwarves. And, I mean, granted, these guys are a little bit more expensive than Dwarf Warriors. But still, even chasing, like, you know, 1 unit of Miners, 1 unit of Dwarf Warriors can easily pay for themselves. Not to mention doing a bunch of damage against the Rangers and so forth. Iron Breakers definitely did a great job for the Dwarves. But for the Dark Elves, 174 kills for those Hargoneth Executioners. Just absolutely mopped up in the center there. And, yeah, decent job with the Harpies, kind of taking out the Brimstone guns. They were able to somewhat pay for themselves in helping to just absolutely wreck that initial Cold One Chariot. But, yeah, 180 kills from Malekith himself on the Lizard Limo. As I mentioned, just an absolute powerhouse in this matchup. And you definitely want some Iron Drakes on the Dwarf side to help deal with that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let's get to the next replay, as we do have quite a few. And we're back. Same 2 players. This time Yumeis has taken the Dark Elves, and Ronan has taken the Wood Elves. So we'll see if the Dark Elves can pull off a win once again against their Forest Folk cousins. Yeah, as for the builds, we've got a whole bunch of Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. Wide sword build, which I have seen, I want to say it was Ronan that also brought this recently in King of the Hill. But yeah, the dual hand weapon infantry and lots of them. Witch Elves, Black Ark Corsairs, we've got Dark Riders with shields, some Harpies, and then, of course, repeater crossbows with a Supreme Sorceress Lore of Death. I actually think maybe in this matchup you ought to go with Lore of Fire, because Fireball is almost as good as Spirit Leech, if not better in a lot of situations. And I do feel that Flaming Sword of Ruin with this giant mass of crossbows, especially against someone like Durthu, be exceptionally effective. And just in general, the magic damage helps against a lot of the physical resistance units that the Wood Elves tend to bring here. And I don't know, I just love Lord of Fire in this matchup. As for the Wood Elves themselves, they've got 3 Deepwood Scouts, Wild Riders with shields. Durthu is here. We've also got some Dryads, Wild Hunters of Kurnos, and some Eternal Guards also with shields. So right off the bat, these Wild Riders taking a Spirit Leech. That's going to pick off a few models there. They also do get an Earthblood, but yeah, like 7 models picked off from a couple Spirit Leeches. They might have had to overcast that with the Supreme Sorceress. It does look like she took some miscast damage potentially. But as the infantry comes in, you can see the Dark Riders with shields are actually being used to somewhat block the shots here, although these Witch Elves got absolutely savaged on the approach there. And definitely a bit of a problem with this unshielded, somewhat expensive low armor infantry that they're going to get absolutely wrecked by the Wood Elf missiles. Dark Riders with repeater crossbows definitely can carry this game, though, and right now they're chilling back well out of range, making sure that they conserve their ammo. They're going to be very important for taking out Durthu. They're basically the only units in this Dark Elf army that have the ability to take out Durthu, and this is very interesting. We've actually got 1 Black Ark Corsair. I don't think this is actually forgotten. I do believe this is intentional. I don't know exactly. They're facing towards the back, so maybe they're checking for a Vanguard, but right now they're being held as a reserve unit, and we'll see kind of how that plays out into the late game. But yeah, Black Ark Corsairs, Witch Elves, other units pushing forward. They're not quite fast enough, unfortunately, talking again about infantry speed. 38 to 40. They will catch them eventually, but it'll take them a long time. 44, Witch Elves have a much better chance, but now getting engaged by Dryads. The Dryads get a good charge. Only 12 charge bonus on them, but still, I mean, baseline. Yeah, they don't have Frenzy or anything, but still, that magic damage and low melee defense of the Witch Elves means the Dryads will trade very efficiently and then win that engagement. Over here, though, with a more full health unit of Witch Elves, it's not going to be so great, especially with, what was that, Flock of Doom? Well, I guess that's on the Dark Elves' rights from Durthu, so pretty good stuff there. We've also got the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, just kind of trying to secure this flank against the Wild Riders and Wild Hunters. They're right now taking a little too much time cleaning up that shattered Corsair, but Durthu's going to push forward now with the Feral Manticore, try and get involved in this infantry fight as the Eternal Guards are getting absolutely wrecked, and I believe that's kind of the intention here, is that Black Ark Corsairs and Witch Elves will trade very well into Eternal Guard. They also trade pretty well into Dryads for the most part. I think probably Corsairs actually trade a little bit more cost-effectively into Dryads. I have to check. I don't know. I really haven't done that much testing in that specific situation, but Durthu is going to be very, very scary, and you can see the Dark Elves already not doing well on the balance of power, having taken so much damage on their expensive infantry, but they're still pushing through, still doing some good damage, and starting to win out some engagements. We do have a Branch Wraith in here as well. No Penumbral Pendulum, unfortunately, which would help clean this up even faster. You know, help get rid of, like, this line right here, you clean out very quickly, but as it is, the massive Dark Riders kind of concentrating over here with their crossbows, able to see back the Wild Riders. Wild Hunters of Kurnos also taking some time chasing, you know, not that expensive routing units. It's a little bit of a mistake. A Spirit Leech on them will pick away continuous models, and again, the skirmish from the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. Yume's understanding his win condition here is very much reliant on the repeater crossbows taking out Durthu. And in order to secure them, he needs to get rid of enemy mobility, right? So cleaning up these Wild Hunters as they're kind of isolated from the rest of the Wood Elf army, great play there with those repeater crossbows. The Deepwood Scouts used up a lot of their ammo. They probably can still do a lot of damage to their Dark Riders, so Yume's does have to be careful there, but balance of power starting to crawl back a little bit in the Dark Elves' favor as these infantry are able to kind of mop up some various units here. Very cost-effective charge with these Dark Riders. Their 40 charge bonus and the low-ish melee defense of the Wild Hunters means that with the bow, the crossbow support especially, they're able to actually win that engagement, just barely, and and actually chase the Wild Hunters off, which is just so cost-effective for them as they themselves then rout. So all's good at the end of the day. Now, with the Deepwood Scouts being tied down by the Harpies, not really having much ammo anyway, the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows can mostly open up with impunity and try and finish off Durthu, and that will absolutely bring this game back into the favor of the Dark Elves. As it is, though, it looks like he is going to try and finish off the last of the Deepwood Scouts, utilizing the mobility of those Dark Riders, and they're decent-ish. I say decent-ish. It's actually absolutely appalling melee stats without Murderous Prowess active, but The Supreme Sorceress drops down, a little bit of extra heroic killing power. The Dark Riders with spears are going to come through and actually get a decent charge, kind of mop up that unit. This unit, at the very least, is being tied down and can't use their last volley, which, I mean, they only really have one shot left. Looks like they're kind of set to fire at will, might miss a lot of those shots shooting the Supreme Sorceress. So once they're out of ammo, and it's going to be really good for Yumeis here. We're going to pop it into fast forward, as there will be a long skirmish phase, as you can imagine, with all these Dark Riders with so much ammo left. And it's going to be very important. Durthu calls up a Manticore, which is going to chase them around and try and pressure them. A great job by him to not just, sit and take it. Try and keep up the pressure as much as he can. But Durthu eventually is going to get into a situation where he can't really defend against this triangle of crossbow cav. And all the time, the Supreme Sorceress is also just kind of dropping down, finding any tattered routing units potentially, and you can see the reserve Black Ark Corsair now comes out completely fresh and healthy in the late game here. How much of a difference that will make, we'll see. The last of the ammunition gets used. Black Ark Corsairs are moving in to engage. They're walking ever so slowly. They're actually walking speed, moving to engage. And the repeater crossbows hit and run. But we'll keep it on fast forward as the Corsairs kind of menacingly walk. That does fulfill the attacking rule, right, technically, for Yumeis, so he then can hit and run and cycle charge with his cav, just as a quick kind of rules note for you guys. The Corsairs were technically fulfilling the attacking rule there, and Raptor himself actually had a question about that. But yes, since they were moving to engage, that does count as attacking, right? So, as it is, though, Durthu's not doing too hot on his leadership, down to less than 200 hit points. The Corsairs, of course, because they're healthy, and all of the rest of these units are exhausted, they're going to trade very efficiently into these Eternal Guards here. And, yeah, Dark Riders getting some good kind of cycle charging as well. The Supreme Sorceress might drop down and try and finish off the last of Durthu's hit points if she can get a good rear charge. Durthu's doing a good job against the Corsairs. I mean, eventually he would probably beat them if he had more HP, but the Supreme Sorceress looks like charges down, gets a hit on Durthu, and will he actually go down now is the question. The Harpies also swarming in, maybe getting a handful of rear attacks, and Durthu down to 88 HP. Will he survive? Will he rout? Looks like Eternal Guards are holding out. Durthu is standing like an absolute champion with his 88 hit points left. Actually manages to terrify away the Harpies, but now the Supreme Sorceress drops down one more time, utilizing her charge bonus. Will she get a hit? I don't know if she actually got the killing blow there, but regardless, Durthu went down. That's going to be a big problem for the Wood Elves leadership. It's all just the Branch Wraith pretty much at this point, and yeah, that's not going to work out too well for them. So good job by both players, honestly. Really, really nice close game. Yumeis did a great job, staying calm, keeping his win condition, his Dark Riders with the Repeater Crossbows alive, and making sure to see off the mobile threats against them, shut down the missiles whenever he could, and then ultimately in the late game, clean up Durthu. This mass infantry thing, I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of this. I mean, yeah, you have a lot of bodies that can do good DPS. I guess that's maybe kind of the point, is you just overloading with targets, but they're all so squishy to missiles. And Witch Elves in particular are just so vulnerable here. I might go with more cavalry even. I mean, Dark Riders with shields, I don't know. Witch Elves, you don't really have like a great kind of middle cavalry option there. I'd have to play around with it and see, but it certainly is an interesting one. You do lack terror units as well, so maybe I would actually cut 2 of these Witch Elves and bring 2 Feral Manticores in this build. That way you have 2 mobile terror options, and it kind of fits in with the theme of high speed, high DPS, hit and run style. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. I do have 2 more replays to get through, so let's get to it. And the chills here, so it must be Falcon playing the Dark Elves, and indeed it is up against Ludwig's Greenskins. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Supreme Sorceress, Lore of Fire, Chill of Sontar, Bleak Swords, Dread Spears. We've got a Death Hag on foot. Got the Chill Blade, I would imagine. No, actually nothing, just kind of there. Interesting, for poison, I guess. Dread Spears. We've also got, Dark Riders with Repeater Crossbows. Lots of light cavalry here. Doomfire Warlocks, Lascious Harvesters. Some Spear Dark Riders. As for the Greenskin Horde, it is a veritable horde here. Goblin Wolf Riders, Spider Riders. We've got Orc Arrow Boys, the Hammer of Gork, Night Goblin Shaman, Orc Biggins, Grimgore leading the way. Skulkers, yeah. It's a build, as they say, Savage Orc Biggins, so lots of Biggins, lots of anti-large, heavy-hitting power, but still good numbers with plenty of light cavalry support, and I love to pick up the Hammer of Gork here, potentially for debuffing Dark Elf melee stats. Can be pretty good, but Fireball going to be thrown. Falcon, a very veteran player, understanding that he needs to take out this artillery piece to try and stop not only the damage, but that debuff. Unfortunately, the first Fireball does not make full contact on that artillery piece. It does kill one poor Gobbo, but yeah, it's not going to actually burn down the catapult, so to speak. The Dark Riders with Peter Crossbows pull up, do some really nice damage against not that expensive units, but still just doing some initial skirmish, maybe trying to draw these Spider Riders and Wolf Riders into a horrible engagement against a bunch of Doomfire Warlocks, Slaanesha's Harvesters. That's just going to be bad. Falcon's also doing a good job utilizing the forest here for cover so that, you know, the artillery will potentially be less effective. Coming up, doing some skirmishing to, again, still be fulfilling the attacking rule. And another little bit of a tough RNG swing there as the Fireball misses once again the artillery piece. It is a little bit of RNG. Fireball's pretty good, pretty consistent most of the time, but sometimes you can get some misses. But, yeah. Ludwig not really liking just getting shot in the face by Dark Riders. Understandably going to start pushing forward with these Savage Orc Biggins here. The Spider Rider Archers just taking a super wide flank, I guess scouting for some extra units, but definitely want to try and stay in range to shoot like the Chill of Sontar, or if they were even within this area to try and counter skirmish against the Dark Riders. But yeah, nice hit and run from the from the Manticore Lady, Supreme Sorceress, excuse me, Supreme Sorceress there. Yeah, right, terrifying away those Savage Orc Biggins who had taken a bunch of shock damage, and a beautiful side breath attack. Doesn't do too much damage to those Biggins, but still a nice engagement, and the Slaanesha's Harvesters, Doomfire Warlocks finally get an engagement and able to catch some of these Greenskins light cavalry, and this is going to be a very one-sided. Wolf Riders cannot even hope to compare to Doomfire Warlocks, and they're just going to die super quickly. Understandably, the Dark Riders providing some nice Overwatch fire as well, and Ludwig's kind of getting pulled a little bit out of position. This is something that Falcon will very often do, is kind of not, he doesn't necessarily want to take bad engagements. Like, he's just not going to run into your front line with a bunch of low-tier chaff and just die. I mean, that's not a good idea in the first place. So he just kind of hangs back here, and Ludwig kind of gets drawn out into some bad engagements. And yeah, all of a sudden you can see over here, Soul Blight going down, debuffing the Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the other light cavalry that had been here, just debuffing their weapon strength. A lot of these Dark Elf units do have low armor, right? So just taking as minimal damage as possible there. Chill of Sontar also obviously providing terror and anti-large. Right now, Grimgor's just having a hard time finding a home. He could try and come take out this Chill of Sontar. In my opinion, that'd probably be the best bet. But, yeah, the Nasty Skulkers rushing over to try and secure the catapult here. I don't believe, yeah, Doomfire Warlocks have not spotted them. I'm not sure. I don't think the Skulkers would even win this engagement. At the best, they're going to hope to at least tie down these Warlocks for a while. Maybe get a Smoke Bomb, which they do, preventing those Doomfire Warlocks from pulling away. And a Wa being used pretty late here. I mean, he didn't really have, like, the greatest chance in the world to use it to begin with. But, yeah. At this point, a few units are engaged in melee, but Falcon's already taking a pretty commanding lead. Nice burning head there, roasting out the Rusty Airs and some Orc Air Boys as well. And this light cavalry force, typically Greenskins, I'm of the opinion that they have some of the best light cavalry in the game. But Falcon proving that the Dark Elves, if you scale heavily in that direction, along with, you know, one to two strong monster choices, I would say the Monster Caster Supreme Sorceress is probably one of the best generic lords in the game. I would put her probably excluding all vampires, because vampires are dumb and bad. No, I just don't like them. Excluding all vampires, I would probably put her at number 3 behind the Glady and the Slawn as a generic lord choice. I think she's very, very strong, especially on the Manticore mount. It's such a cost-effective option. She does get Murderous Prowess on the Manticore as well, which means while that's active, that is going to be giving her a big damage spike. You can see up to 63 charge bonus when that other stuff wears off, 50 melee attack, and very, very effective for a caster monster lord. As cheap as she is, it's super strong. She's going to charge in, and together, point blank fireball on the ground. I didn't even know that was possible. Chill of Sontar does get its healing proc there, looks like, and that does force army losses as Grimgor routes. So really textbook from Falcon there. Beautiful kind of hybrid monster mobility play with just a handful of supporting infantry and some nice mobile skirmish units as well. 84 kills on the Supreme Sorceress. Excellent stuff. All the Dark Riders racked up, or sorry, the Dark Riders and the Doomfire Warlocks racked up a ton of kills. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get to the next replay. Not really too much to talk about in the Greenskins build. He just, honestly, Ludwig needed to stay a little bit tighter with his light cavalry to his missile line and just play off of the Orc Airboys as much as possible, right? And I mean, if the Doomfire Warlocks want to charge in and, you know, try and hit the Savage Orc Biggins in the face, I guess that's not great, to be honest, but it's also not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, just keeping, especially these skirmish cav, a little bit tighter to your infantry line, you know, almost using them as like mobile bow units, right? As you would like your Orc Airboys, essentially just like a secondary group of them that can run away if they have to. Anyway, let's go ahead. I've got one more replay to show you, so let's get to it. Alright, and here we are for the final game. It's Falcon versus Anticity. Anticity is actually playing the Dwarfs, so we get to see this matchup one more time. Absolute grudge match, very thematic, and yeah, a bit of different builds this time. For the Dwarfs, we've got a lot more Thunderers rather than Rangers, and Bugman's Rangers at that. Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, Miners with Blasting Charges, yeah, 4 Thunderers. Looks like, I guess, 4 Rangers, 2 Bugmans, 2 regular. What? Oh no, 5 Thunderers. Dragonbag Slayers, a Rune Lord, more Ironbreakers, Miners with Blasting Charges. So just all the Blasting Charges and all of the guns and crossbows with just a single hero in a nice defensive missile position. Got a Supreme Sorceress, Lore of Beasts here. 2 Cold One Chariots, Bleak Swords, plenty of Harpies. Over here, a couple of Dark Riders with their Peter crossbows. Dark Shards with shields, who unfortunately, because they get outranged here, are just going to have a bit of a bad time. Bleak Swords, more Harpies, and yeah, no Executioners this time. Let's see how it goes. Lizard Limo is going to be pushing up over on this flank. You can see Dwarf Guns are redeploying to try and respond. Falcon's going to go ahead and pull away there before he gets shot up too much. Just try and counter-skirmish a little bit with these crossbows. Unfortunately, the crossbows, you can see, I mean, the shielded dwarf units do take a lot of damage, even with the shields, but it's just because of the range differential, the shields, I mean, I guess technically the Dark Shards have a better missile block chance, but the volume of fire situation and cost effectiveness is really not going to be in favor of the Dark Elves, and especially against the Bugman's Rangers, which can regenerate. The Harpies come down, and this is actually going to be an engagement that the Harpies will just straight up lose, even without the help of the Blasting Charges, which actually does help them a little bit, but also kills them horribly. Bugman's Ranger is just, because of their defensive stats, the regeneration, they also have pretty good attack stats too, at 24 attack and 31 weapon strength. I mean, they will just beat the Harpies straight up. The Harpies will be able to tie them down for a while, but they're not going to win. Meanwhile, over on this flank, though, you can see these Miners have been broken up. The Lizard Limos are starting to make a little bit of a push, as the Harpies do as well. Summon Manticore drops down to disrupt one of those units of Thunderers, and the push is on, so to speak. More Blasting Charges being thrown. All of the Dark Elf kind of light infantry here, the Bleak Swords, will get absolutely ransacked by the Blasting Charges. Just absolutely blown to Kingdom Come. But at the same time, yeah, the Dwarf Missiles are trying to stay tight. The Thunderers especially, if they can get good Overwatch fire. And good job of the Dark Riders just being used to tie down those Thunderers in melee, prevent them from shooting at those Cold One Chariots. They are obviously a win condition unit here to be able to do a lot of damage. And yeah, as expected, the Bleak Swords all lost horribly, but the crossbows actually have been able to not lose too horribly. Not really a lot of kill totals, though, if you look kind of across the board here. Really kind of underwhelming, to be honest, but Murderous Prowess pops off at this point. Going to get a nice little damage spike. Dragonback Slayers pursuing the Cold One Chariots, and we've got another unit, yeah, the other unit of Cold One Chariots here kind of tying down 2 units of Thunderers somehow at the same time, which is pretty impressive, but the second one is going to get set and firing. So the Dwarf Guns, whoop, looks like they ping-pong back and forth just in time. Kind of on the yo-yo slide there. But anyway, the Repraetor Crossbows getting some good fire. The Harpies probably going to be used to try and chase peripheral routing units. But things are not looking amazing for the Dark Elves. I mean, the Dark Shards are starting to get some effective fire. Still, if we take a look at the kill totals, nothing wildly impressive. And I guess they don't have a lot of model count to shoot at anyway, but the Dark Riders pushing through into the second line here. The Cold One Chariots have taken a lot of damage, but they are still both in operation of all 3 unit models, right? So that does help. Still full killing power, more or less. They've also used up a lot of their ammunition, which is just fantastic, but Dragonback Slayers are going to be a little bit of a problem here if they start to get some hits, and stacking that with the Rune of Wrath and Ruin essentially immobilizes the Cold One Chariots. Not exactly, but they're down to 6 speed, which means these Slayers can get consistent attacks here, start to drag down the unit models, and hopefully finish them off. You can see the Dwarves also responding there, so one unit model goes down for that second Chariot unit. This one still holding all of its models for the time being, but no, 2 of them simultaneously explode as the third one tries to run away and flee in terror, but also gets exploded by Slayers. The Dragonback Slayers just absolutely finish one unit off there. Now, that being said, the balance of power is slightly in the Dark Elves' favor. We've got some Harpy shattering here, Cold One Chariots, the other one also routing with only 2 models remaining. But the Serene Sorceress Laura B is going to come in, start to use her melee power, and these Dark Shards actually in this late game could prove pretty decisive. Dwarfs do have some tools to respond, and these 2 Bugman's Rangers in particular might be able to win, along with these regular Rangers, might be able to actually win out against those Repeater Crossbows. You can see them moving over to engage there against those Dark Shards. The Dark Riders coming in to, again, tie down those Thunderers, but this time there are more Thunderers in Overwatch, and Slayers coming to defend, so they're going to have to pull away there, and the Bugmans move into range. So let's see. This is kind of a pretty good litmus test, if you will, of my own opinions of the Dwarf skirmish power, how they'll fare here. Now, I will say these Dark Shards are kind of blobbed up, so that is already going to be working against them somewhat. But they do have some supporting friends kind of coming over on this flank right here. Bugman's Rangers don't have the same missile block chance, right? But how much of a difference will that regeneration make here? Looks like the Dark Shards, volleys still do some pretty good damage, but as the health kind of ticks back there, right, the value starts to diminish. And Bugman's Rangers are returning plenty of effective fire here. I mean, it's also not doing all that much damage, but yeah, the Bugman's Rangers at this point, because of their superior range, can kind of kite and shoot and try and fall back to the support of these Thunderers as well. With the Thunderers, the Dwarfs have a much greater volume of fire and a much superior range as well. So you can see as the Supreme Sorceress gets dragged down by the Dragonback Slayers, that is going to tip the balance of power pretty decisively. Characters, of course, counting a lot for the balance of power, and especially casters relative to their melee strength. She just straight up goes down here, which is going to throw a lot of the Dark Elf units into low leadership. They're very uncertain about the situation now, and let's kind of get in close for the final shootout here in the open. What is this? Bloodpine Woods, I believe? Yeah, one of my favorite maps. Falcon's going to throw in the towel there as his Dark Shards were about to meet the Slayers in melee, which can only end one way. So we finish with a nice Dawi victory over the Dark Elves, just to remind everyone that Dark Elves are, very evil and deserve to be beaten down at every turn, and are also quite a bit of fun to play. Nice to see them used very effectively. They're not a faction that I use terribly often, just because I'm not the biggest fan of their kind of theming and style and everything. They do have some cool units, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's not a faction I choose to play all that often, so nice to see some high-level play there from some various players. So a big thanks to everyone, once again, who's participated in my banner tournament. I know it's been a while since that, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.